If we don't find anything at this present landfill, and if we have to look at another landfill.
Tonight, the search for the remains of 2 Indigenous women in a Winnipeg landfill may be one step closer.
And what we found was that 40% of the people, there was no sort of formal plan approach.
BC's Auditor General finds services for Indigenous inmates lacking.
Art is a form of healing for me, and it's a part of learning.
And a Montreal shelter creates a welcoming space. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is optimistic that a search for remains at a Winnipeg area landfill will start this spring. Kathy Merrick provided an update on what is being done with federal government funding earmarked for a feasibility study. She says some money could go toward the search itself. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
Well, first and foremost, our women should not be ending up in landfills in this province.
Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Kathy Merrick, says there needs to be long-term, holistic solutions to end violence against women. At a press conference, she provided an update on what's being done by a feasibility committee appointed to study issues around searching Winnipeg landfills for the remains of women alleged to have been dumped by serial killer 35-year-old Jeremy Skibicki. He's maintained his innocence since being formally charged in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women. Merrick says the federal dollars will go not only toward the feasibility study on a search for the women's remains, but also provide healing services to their families. And she says the $500,000 is just a start.
If we don't find anything at this present landfill, and if we have to look at another landfill, then we will have to be able to provide another proposal to that matter. But we gave heads up to the governments that this is what we have discussed at our level here.
A member of the Feasibility Study Committee says so far their forensics experts have looked to an Ontario case to guide them.
There was different technologies that were used that we're trying to bring in so that we can do the same methods here, and the best way to do that. However, we have to stay within environmental concerns as well.
Kristen Flattery says the committee decided that using a large conveyor belt to go through the tons of material will be the best method to search for remains. Meanwhile, a family member of Morgan Harris, one of the victims believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill, said she appreciates being included on the committee, saying it provides a layer of transparency to the process. She was asked if something should have been done sooner.
In a better world, it would have been, but I mean, we are where we are now, and all we can do is move forward and try to do things to the best of our ability, I think. So that's where my focus is going to be.
For Kathy Merrick, more needs to be done to ensure Indigenous women are safe when they leave their First Nations for the city.
It's not by choice that they leave our communities either. It's because there's a lack of housing. You won't find a university in any First Nation in Manitoba. And so we need to be able to ensure that when our students leave the community, that there's safety measures here, that we're here for them to be able to come to us.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We want to hear your thoughts on this ongoing story. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send us an email to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Calm Unity is an organization in Montreal's Milton Park neighborhood. It's looking to bring the city's unhoused population and its other residents together with an open door policy, art workshops, and hopefully a new day shelter. Amelia Fournier has more.
Sila Kelly has sometimes been homeless, but that's not how he defines himself.
I'm someone. I'm a person. I'm an artist. I'm a father. I'm a citizen. I'm an uncle. I'm all these things. I have to make sure I grasp and acknowledge that I am these things. I'm not just a homeless person. I am someone.
Community Center has a similar philosophy. It considers unhoused people just part of a community and provides a safe space for the unhoused and housed residents of Montreal's Milton Park neighborhood to interact. It's home to a workspace, library, and small outdoor space, and connects volunteers and support workers with the neighborhood's homeless population.
We are looking for people to lead workshops with art and teach some Concordia students and things. And would that be something you would potentially be interested in if we could get the funding?
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Sila is a frequent visitor of the center. He's also an Inuit carver who's been living on the streets of Montreal for about a decade.
I come from an artisan family. We do stonework. We do printing, drawing, printing, sewing within my family. Art is a form of healing for me, and it's a part of learning.
Sila hasn't always had access to art space. When he first arrived in Montreal, it was a tough adjustment.
And when I first came down there, I had a culture shock. The hustle and bustle, the noise pollution, the everybody for themselves mentality. I come from a very close-knit community where everybody knows everybody. And it's more homey, it's like people helping each other more.
By accessing Montreal-based services like Open Door and Community, he's been able to sell his art and just got an apartment.
It's a struggle still, I gotta work my way up slowly, one step at a time.
Chelsea works for Mossy Society, one of Community's partner organizations, organizing art workshops with unhoused populations.
Just speaking to street people, we've realized that there's just a high demand for activity that's not drinking alcohol or doing drugs on the street. They want to keep occupied in positive, constructive ways.
Homelessness isn't a simple problem that can be solved by giving people a job and a house, says Jonathan Labier. He's the director of Community. Montreal opened up temporary emergency shelters during the recent cold snap, but Jonathan says people and governments need to lend a hand year-round.
Homelessness is often seen like one problem, and a problem that comes mostly in crisis, so we kind of react in crisis mode. So I think often it prevents for sustainability, from building a relationship that lasts with a participant and an organization.
Jonathan says building community is vital to helping the unhoused.
La seule façon de réagir à l'itinérance puis d'aider, c'est it takes a village, c'est que ça prend une communauté complète où chacun est aussi important en fait qu'un autre dans tout ça. Fait que ça prend de l'inclusion, ça prend de la compréhension, du pardon.
Community's programming is currently funded by grants, but they're hoping to get more stable funding and a day shelter nearby in the near future. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
Indigenous inmates in BC prisons are not getting the services they need. That's according to a new Auditor General report. We'll speak with the author of that report after the break. Welcome back. A British Columbia Auditor General report paints a grim picture of mental health and substance abuse services for Indigenous inmates. The report finds that PHSA is not delivering adequate services to Indigenous inmates with a mental health or substance abuse diagnosis. There's inconsistent access across the system. This despite the fact that Indigenous men and women also make up 33% of those in custody, but only make up 6% of BC's population. Joining us now is Auditor General for BC, Michael Pickup. Michael, thanks for being with us and taking some time here. What did the mental health and substance abuse audit cover?
Sure. So it really looked at the Indigenous population in correctional facilities within British Columbia to determine if the PHSA, the relevant health authority, was providing the services that it wanted to provide to this group of people.
So what were some of the findings and recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So we looked at, sort of from intake, people coming into the correctional facilities through to discharge. And what we found was that 40% of the people, there was no sort of formal plan approach, recognizing that Indigenous people that come into the correctional facilities here in BC, 90% have a mental health or substance use disorder, or in fact both. So 20% of these folks coming in had a plan for some services in place, and only 40% had a complete plan. So that is sort of from the time you come in to the treatment that you receive or the services that you receive while you're in the correctional facilities.
Your report mentions gaps in monitoring and oversight. What does that do to?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things here is sort of, looking at supervisory review. So there are files, there is an approach that the PHSA has put in place. Built into that, one would expect, and they would expect a certain level of supervisory reviews. So what we found of the Indigenous offenders that are in the correctional facilities, we found that 34% of those files we looked at, there was no supervisory review. Another 34%, there was some review, but not regularly. And then the final sort of, roughly 1/3 were reviewed on a regular basis. So when you consider that, only 1 out of 3 files for Indigenous offenders in these correctional facilities were being reviewed on a regular basis. And that was part of the problem, and PHSA recognizes that.
Given that, what is the impact on Indigenous inmates?
So recognizing again that, Indigenous offenders are coming into these correctional facilities, let's say 9 out of 10 people have some significant issues in terms of mental health, substance use. So the expectation is that these things exist in order to help people, including, I might want to add, the importance of discharge plans. So at some point, folks will be coming out of the correctional facilities. What we found is that for the files we looked at, 89% of the Indigenous clients had no complete discharge plan in place for what will happen after you get out of the correctional facilities. Mm-hmm. So that's a critical part too. It's what happens when you come in, what happens while you're there, what happens when you leave.
So you've got your report, you've got recommendations. What happens here next?
So I'm really pleased to see how the PHSA has responded. They accepted our recommendations in the audit, and they also released quite a detailed action plan yesterday as the actions that they're already taken to address what we've raised and other issues as well. They've added additional resources. They are changing things. So I'm really hopeful, and we will be back to follow up. So we're not, one and done and have this one day. We will be back to follow up with the PHSA to say, what did you do with the recommendations? And we will report that to the legislature and all people in BC to say, this is what happened after.
Well, sir, appreciate your work on this and for taking some time for us here today.
Happy to do it, and I might also add for your info, if it didn't come up, I am Canada's first Indigenous Auditor General, so this is very important to me, the topic of Indigenous offenders, professionally and personally as well. So I did just want to add that is partially why this is so important to me.
The federal correctional investigator, Ivan Zinger, was before a parliamentary committee Friday morning, fielding questions on his most recent annual report. The report once again notes the high overrepresentation of both Indigenous men and women in Canada's federal prison system. When asked by a member of the Public Safety and National Security Committee why these numbers continue to persist, a senior investigator with Zinger's office had this to say.
The overrepresentation in the institutions right now is due to the lack of the willingness or the desire to have the Indigenous or the Black population to move into medium and minimum. And our healing lodges, most of them are sitting empty as well because there's that control factor that CSC seems to have on these people.
There's a fun and interesting episode of InFocus coming up next Wednesday. Here's Daryl Stranger to tell you all about it.
Hello everyone, Valentine's Day is fast approaching and we thought it would be a great time to do an InFocus based on love. And as always, we want you to join in on the talk next week. We want to see any photos or videos of things you love, like your partner, dogs, kids, or a favorite cultural activity that you love doing. You can send in what you love to infocus@aptn.ca and you might just end up in our love-themed episode of InFocus.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Viewer Dave Menzies shared this picture of his cat trying to take on a polar bear while watching Polar Bear Town on APTN. No word on who won. Thanks for sharing, Dave. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, you can email us your pictures to share@aptn.ca, or you could even tag APTN News on Instagram. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 10 in Halifax, 5 above for Charlottetown. Minus 24 and sunny skies in Kuujjuaq, 21 below in Nain. Sunny and minus 2 for Montreal, snow and 9 below in Chibougamau. Plus 1 in Sault Ste. Marie, snow and minus 4 in North Bay. Minus 6 in Thunder Bay, plus 2 with flurries in Sioux Lookout. Minus 5 in snow in God's Lake, 6 below in Norway House. Plus 2 in Winnipeg, 1 below with snow in Dauphin. Sunny and minus 1 for Regina and North Battleford, plus 1 in Saskatoon, 0 in Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, minus 7 with snow for Fort Chip, plus 2 and snow in Fort McMurray. 4 in Edmonton, sunny and plus 6 in Lethbridge. 7 above for Vancouver, plus 8 in Victoria. Plus 1 with flurries in Prince George, cloudy and 5 in Smithers. Minus 25 in Old Crow, 1 below in Whitehorse. Minus 13 with snow in Yellowknife, 26 below in Norman Wells. Sunny and minus 29 for Sax Harbor, 25 below with snow in Paulatuck. Minus 35 in Chesterfield, 37 below in Baker Lake. Minus 36 in Resolute, 39 below in Joe Haven. The province of Saskatchewan may soon be rocking out to more Indigenous music. APTN's Brett McGilvery explains.
Step forward for Indigenous music in Saskatchewan. Fiddler Donnie Parenteau recently founded the Saskatchewan Indigenous Music Association after imagining an Indigenous Music Award show.
I thought about the Indigenous community in Saskatchewan, and it'd be nice to have their own award show, and not really like a national one, but just their own in the province of Saskatchewan. And that's how the idea blossomed in my head. And the first phone calls I've made was to Cheryl and Grant Kimbley and asked them about the idea. And it built from there to leading up to a board, and the ideas that we have now building this foundation is way more than just an award show coming.
Board members Cheryl and Grant Kimbley know all too well how isolating the North can be for many First Nations in the North. They hope to help artists across the province connect and come together.
Our heart sits with the North. That's where my husband is from, and he had said, you know, if they had these resources, if they had these kinds of things to look forward to know that they could use their voice that way, it would have saved a lot of lives and give people that didn't have that voice before, felt like they didn't fit in, a place where they can shine.
They want to lift up young and emerging artists who need help outside their communities.
I'm thinking of some young person up in the northern community, 14 years old, who just wrote a song, and they don't know what to do outside of their home. Where do we go? How do we do this? well, we have the knowledge.
A Prince Albert Awards show is their main focus for the upcoming year, and October 1st is fast approaching. They want artists to get signed up for the E.A. Rawlinson Center event, which will be free, and build up from there.
Having the young people from northern Saskatchewan to central to southern, east and west, being able to come together in a more fluid way where they're connected and there's networking happening, and people that are young people in northern Saskatchewan that feel alone and left out no longer feel that because they're connected to something bigger than themselves.
Brent McGillivray, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Great initiative there. Well, to a big prize now, and an Inuit designed and led mental health and wellness project in Nunavut now has $1 million more to work with. That's because Nunavut Literacy Council's Pili Imok Sili Iayak is the 2022 winner for the Top Arctic Inspiration Prize. The prize is awarded annually at a ceremony in Ottawa Wednesday night. More than $2.7 million was doled out to 7 projects from across the north. Runners-up included a Yukon-based recovery program and a Nunavik-based research initiative. Both were awarded $500,000, and an elders teaching program in the Mackenzie Delta region of the Northwest Territories received $450,000. Members of the Nunavut Literacy Council say the $1 million will go toward strengthening community-based wellness programming.
And what this project will specifically do is support frontline community service providers, community champions, programmers with training and skills, first and foremost on Inuit Kalimay, and then they will learn and we will share with them the approaches, styles, and methodologies of Ilitoxinak style programming, because we want that to be a new method of training and learning for Inuit, because we know it works. We've seen the results within our program.
Well, as you likely know by now, the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs face off this weekend on Super Bowl Sunday. But even if you don't like football, you may want to tune in for some of the Indigenous performances. That's Patrick Mitswing there, a member of the Cree Makwa Sagin First Nation in Saskatchewan, who will be showing off his fancy dance during a welcome showcase. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with an expected 70,000 fans in the stadium and roughly 100 million viewers tuning in. Mitswing will be documenting his Super Bowl journey and asking folks to follow along on the Powwow Times YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook page. And for the first time ever, the National Football League will recognize the Indigenous land on which the games will take place. Mitswing will be the sole dancer from Canada, but other dancers will perform before and throughout the game. Excited for that and for the big game itself. Our Daryl Stranger is a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. I'm rooting for Kansas City, but most excited for Rihanna. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend.